This was a rather exhausting video to put together, not just because I've been busy with a bunch of other things in my personal life, but also because as I was in the process of writing this, I've been seeing a lot of different videos that are bringing up subjects that I really feel I gotta talk about, contributing to my desire to want to put this thing together and get it off my chest. And yet in doing so, I am fully aware that I am dipping into hot water with this topic, and this whole video might not be as good as my intentions for it are. You decide. Feel free to tell me. But in any case, I'd like to start this video out with a sentence from Mr. Enter's most recent video.
The video seems to be under the logic that it's the consumer's duty to support an industry. This is not how business works. It is the industry, any industry, not just video games, it is their duty to sell a product the consumers want at a price that they can afford. If they can't do that, then they fail, and it is not the consumer's fault or responsibility.
I may catch some flack for saying this, but I can't bring myself to fully agree with Mr. Enter's claim here. He does go on to refer to how prices for purchasing movies and in-home consumption is only affected by alterations in the formatting, while AAA big-budget movies are becoming more expensive to produce and the audience for them hasn't grown. But one thing to consider is that a very prominent reason I hear of people not going to the theaters anymore is due to ticket prices being too expensive, which is valid, but considering not only how expensive theatrical movies have become to produce, but also how they take millions of additional dollars to market, and the competition they face with one another, especially if it's up against one of the big boys, and the cost to maintain the facilities of the theaters themselves, films couldn't very well turn a profit if ticket prices weren't lowered, unless it's a case where exploitative filmmakers overworked or underpaid the rest of the team, which nobody wants. That's why the subject of my video here in my Art vs. Commerce series is regarding A, audience participation and how the contributions of a consumer is extremely crucial, and B, what an individual's interpretation provides the soul of the piece. Once again, my specialty is film, but I will try to have this topic be applicable to most entertainment and art in the field. Another video that really inspired me to make this video was Lindsay Ellis's recent Woke Disney editorial, and her point on how the whole company is only concerned with parading themselves as progressive so long as they can market it. You can come to your own conclusions about the merits of the video, but it did not sit well with me personally. Maybe part of it is that I'm just so fed up with people ranting how Disney's live action department is the worst thing in the world, even though we've got 2 upcoming non-remake live action films and the announcement of a live action product that's not based on a pre-existing property. Maybe it's that I wish people would just talk about something else, which in essence might make me come off as oblivious or just permissive to letting the whole Disney monopoly thing happen. But after giving it some thought, I think it was because I didn't know what the whole takeaway of the video was supposed to be, apart from the whole modern Disney as a whole is cynical and false and is just grabbing more and more to become a monopoly. A bandwagon that the entirety of the rest of the internet is all too keen to jump aboard, especially this year. And for me, it's just exhausting, frustrating, and depressing. But rather than ranting, I want to draw my attention to one particular quote from her video.
If anything, the transition from old Disney to new Disney is a transition from monarchy is good to capitalism is good. There's always a good king or a good bank or a good businessman, and these conclusions, while they pay lip service to progressive ideals, ultimately conclude that nothing of the status quo need be challenged. This is not to say that empowering women to be leaders or a family keeping their house or cruelty-free circuses are a bad thing, but if that's all you got, then that's not progress, that's just marketing.
I know that in this day and age where everybody likes to antagonize the House of Mouse for being this Hollywood King Midas that becomes soulless and corporate with everything it touches, lots of people would like to point to Walt-era Disney as an example of being successful and caring about the art part. But I would also like to point out that even Walt himself was pretty bent on marketing, something Lindsay has also thoroughly explained in her Revolutionist World of Disney video. In fact, you want to know one quote that I heard biographics referred to as they talked about Walt Disney? It's, "I'd rather entertain and hope that my audience learns than teach and hope that my audience be entertained." Now, I get what Lindsay's going for with her quote, that Disney's supposedly not interested in anything more than getting rich while playing it safe and preserving a good public image. Yeah, big shock. And that brings me to something that Senator Rowe said in one of his videos.
Blockbusters are no longer about crowd-pleasing entertainment. They're no longer about telling a story. They've just become a vehicle through which studios can sell tickets, nothing more. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can make a movie that's a crowd pleaser, a blockbuster, but still tells a great story.
I do technically agree with the bottom line of what Senator Rowe says here, but there is something I am compelled to bring up. And that's the matter that I cannot think of a single film I've seen that wasn't an art house film, that was never criticized either for being too pretentious, too all spectacle no substance, or just too formulaic, to some extent or another, to fill some sort of studio-mandated agenda. You can never realistically tell what will or won't stand the test of time in advance. Even some of the most beloved films today were commonly criticized upon their initial releases. Not to mention that in an age where fewer and fewer people are compelled to go see films when they hit theaters, especially in North America, Hollywood's current primary audience is China, which, as we've seen, have their own ideas about what makes a quality product. As someone who despises the every movie is greenlit for money excuse as an immediate defense, even I can still understand that marketing is a business's priority. Yes, a work that's being distributed by a large marketing business can transcend all that, and even be progressive, either from a technical standpoint or an influence on the audience, but a big part of that comes from the individuals, be it the individuals working on one big collaboration who are trying to push the envelope with the craft or the message of a piece, or the audience who decides what they take away from it and apply it to their lives. Heck, when it comes to YouTube, the bulk majority of content creators I see, not that I specifically watch, focus on the marketing of their videos while technically only paying lip service to good ideals. After all, there is something to be said for do as I say, not as I do. We're all hypocrites at some points in our lives. How many examples of reviewers, both on and off the internet, failed to follow their own advice when critiquing something, as well as parents who are trying to teach their children not to make the same mistakes as them? There are also instances where works that are made just to promote progress and teach the audience things can backfire and blow up in creators' faces. For one, there's something to be said about how we tie the moral to the story, not the other way around. This is what the whole foundation of making analyses of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic episodes has been based on. Never mind how fans and creators have helped it to evolve into something beyond just a commercial for toys. Then there's the matter of whether a certain highly regarded studio is good with a few bad components or bad as a whole with only a few good components. It's of course easy to point at Disney nowadays as they're reaching to purchase more and more, but also for the likes of denying a father's request to put Spider-Man on the grave of his deceased 4-year-old son. On the other hand, you do have the news about Snow White at Disneyland performing above and beyond in comforting an autistic child and going out of her way to spend the whole day with him, or Hercules getting a public theater stage adaptations where actors of color are most prominent. I already talked briefly in my Misanthropony video about how it's possible for great art to be made by horrible people, and that you can still love and appreciate a product having known that people behind it suffered in the process. Likewise, even when it comes to what feels like the most hollow, monotonous, corporate, cynical, soulless pieces of entertainment out there, I can believe that there is at least one person behind it who wanted to give it their all and bring something personal to it. Lots of people love Jim Carrey's Grinch, maybe or maybe not more than the original Chuck Jones special, or even Illumination's rendition for that matter. And director Ron Howard said that he loved this classic so much that he wasn't even going to try and outshine it. But he also did dedicate the film to his mother who loved Christmas holiday beyond words descriptions. Now, I'm not trying to be a capitalist apologist here, I'm just saying that it's America's favorite game to play. If one doesn't like capitalism, then one does always have the option to go support ideals that he or she does like socialism. For indie films that don't have the means of obtaining the money that can rival big Hollywood blockbusters, it's up to you viewers to spend less time sitting on your asses at home complaining about the abundance of stuff you can't find in your mainstream theater, especially if you're not willing to pay a ticket to go and see it, and more time searching for obscure labors of love that deserve your support. Yes, even if sometimes they're not your favorite films in the world. Because who knows, those might be the films to become the next Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. I realize as someone who has illustrated a children's book, which the author and I are really looking for new ways for it to get popular and garner a decent audience, that I can't force a consumer to support us. I can't decide for them if their product is something that they'll definitely like, and if they and their child think that it's worth their hard-earned cash. All I can do is create the best product I can and look for ways for it to garner exposure, and maybe invite people to help along the way. Another reason why it's sometimes best to entertain and hope the audience learn, as I've come to discover, is because each person in the audience will always have a different reaction, largely based on their own experience. I've already talked about this more in my own video on fan raging, but some people will take something super trivial in a work and blow it completely out of proportion, often talking as if they have the most authoritative power. And yes, this does have damaging effects. This is why it's bad to give fans too much control in any field, Because really, if you Star Wars fans can't let go of your hatred for what Lucas did to the prequels or what Disney is currently doing to the franchise for just 1 minute and let me come to my own conclusions about them, you're not encouraging me to engage with the franchise. You're only giving more reason to put as much distance between myself and it, and especially you, as possible. Now, I'm not one to play favorites and deny that anything that I liked may have come from a place where wrongs were committed. After all, John Lasseter was and still is one of my biggest artistic influences, even though I do strive to avoid becoming the sort of person he has become. I'm also not one to try and change people's minds if they think something is completely horrible, in spite of any good merits it might find in it. But just trying to reiterate to me how the stuff I grew up with or how the stuff I was inspired by was garbage won't sway me to try and convince myself that I don't like it. Because then I would be lying to myself, and it would deprive me of the chance to learn to rise above and beyond so that I can end up being a better person and creating a better work. And trying to iterate to me how everything I see now is garbage and or dissuading me from seeing it would only make me want to cling to the stuff of the past even more, even though I know that has its own problems, thus only creating more of this vicious cycle where the industry is all the more prompted to exploit my nostalgia. If audiences and individual creators could never have had a voice in the industry of film, then not only could it never arise above and beyond to have the cultural impact that it does today, it would also still be seen as some sort of force of evil, and not just the prototypical business or capitalism kind of evil we like to joke about all the time. I'm talking about destruction of humanity evil. The film that basically established the Hollywood blockbuster formula that we've been using for over a century now was in fact a piece of KKK propaganda. But if the art form has stuck with us this long, then it must be doing something right. To conclude, while it's a creator's responsibility to create a good product that people will want and get a good distributor to make it accessible to the public, I do still believe that audience does play a more important part in the success of a product than they might realize, be it helping to draw attention to things that aren't blessed with a big budget marketing, and thus giving creators and distributors more incentive to take chances and go in more creative directions, or spreading word that influences what people expect to see of these products and what direction they go in, or if they even stop being made altogether. I also believe that it's possible for films and various other art pieces to rise above and beyond tools for capitalism, even if capitalism and marketing is the primary intention with them. It can come through either the creator's own place of love, or through something sparked within an audience member that inspires them to do something with it. Or it can even be something that gives the consumer a good, if not the most meaningful, experience for a time, like Toy Story 4 did to me. There is still magic if you look in the right places and or if you apply some magic yourself. But what's important to remember is that everyone's experience of magic is going to vary, and there will never be such a thing as a universally loved product, at least not in the foreseeable future. So what's important is to focus on what you benefit from it, and if you are a creator, transcribe it to your audience the best way you can, or if you are a consumer, articulate and share your feelings to help influence how art is made and help others articulate and come to their own terms on a piece. Let me know what your guys' thoughts and opinions are, and I look forward to hearing your responses in the comments. Thank you.